It's the Monday Morning Show. How you doing? Today is February 2nd, 2018. I'm Ken LaSalle. Thank you for listening. Thank you to the one guy watching this on YouTube. And lots of new stuff on Amazon, Audible, iTunes, and over on KenLaSalle.com. Thank you for caring. Okay, I got all that out of the way. Let's talk hiking. We are now about 3 months outside of my start date on the Pacific Crest Trail. And I thought I'd use this opportunity to talk about why I may not be hiking the PCT this year. But to do that, let's go back in time just a little bit. The year was 2013, and I had just spoken with Mindy Dunham for my previous podcast, So Dream Something. Mindy was a PCT thru hiker who finished in 2012, and when I spoke with her, now, I'd been hiking off and on, mostly off because I could never find anyone who wanted to go hiking with me for most of my life. But the idea of backpacking cross-country had never occurred to me. Never in a real way, at least. I'd seen the Pacific Crest Trail before. I'd actually stood on it once. A friend and I had hiked up Bertha Peak, just outside of Big Bear, and had seen the PCT like some kind of great highway cutting through the mountainside. The mystery of it inspired me. But then I spoke with Mindy, who had actually hiked it, and I knew, well, I was approaching 50. And that's an age when it's good to get a new challenge. Shake off the complacency of middle-agedness, you know? So I told Vicky that I wanted to hike the PCT one day. And Vicky, being Vicky, she said, okay. And that was it. Granted, she probably expected me to actually do it. I think she's learned better by now, though. As the years passed, I started hiking more by myself, getting used to going out there alone, getting accustomed to the idea of it. And it was weird for me because I always thought you had to have someone hike with you. You know, the buddy system. But at that age, I was tired of looking for someone else. I decided that the only way I was going to do this was alone. So, alone it was. But I'd never backpacked alone, and that didn't exactly come naturally. Actually, none of this did. I always thought I was a pretty good hiker and backpacker, but I quickly learned that I wasn't. Not at all. And that's where my trail name comes from, World's Worst Backpacker. But I want you to listen to me for a second, in case you weren't already. Because we don't often get an opportunity to form a viewpoint or a philosophy that is unique to us as an individual. But this turned out to be one of those opportunities. Here it is. Go find something you suck at, that you absolutely can't do, and then make yourself do it. Those are my words of wisdom to you. Because you'll learn so much more about yourself than you ever thought possible. You'll grow more as a person than you thought you could. And adopting this philosophy at my age, I was in my 50s by the time I took my first trip up the PCT, meant I learned so much more about myself, breaking free of my comfort zone. You just have to be willing to make an ass of yourself. It's really that easy. So, my first backpacking trip on the Pacific Crest Trail wasn't the best idea ever. It took place in the middle of October 2015. It was a very cold month. The air was freezing when my wife dropped me off at the trailhead. And I picked the worst route on top of that, Onyx Peak to Big Bear. I didn't make it. I lost heart a mere hours into my first day. I just thought, I'll never be able to do this. It's impossible. Truth be told, I also actually cracked the skin on the bottom of both of my feet. So yeah, it looked like a really stupid idea. Clearly, I should give up backpacking pronto quick. I just wasn't made for it. 6 months or so later, I was at Campo. My first backpacking trip on the PCT had taken me 9 miles and had wiped me out completely. But in 2016, I hiked 11 miles outside of Campo, made camp under some manzanita trees, and let's face it, everything that could go wrong did. I won't go into too much detail. You can get all of that in my monologue, The World's Worst Backpacker.
Still available on Amazon, Audible, iTunes, etc.
But the long and the short of it was that after hiking the 11 miles out and then the 11 miles back, I more than doubled my distance on the PCT. It's easy to see the negatives. I had screwed up on the first day. Sure, you bet. But I had improved at something that I admittedly sucked at. And even though I told Vicky that I would never, ever do that again, you can bet I was back on the PCT the following year. Absolutely. But in the intervening 12 months or so, I did everything I could to make myself ready. I trained a lot. I actually overtrained. When I started the trail, I was already tired and sore. I lost a toenail, not from my PCT hiking, but from my training. Now, last year, I did pretty well despite making some terrible mistakes. What I mean is, I did pretty well for me. Keep in mind that my previous 2 attempts had taken me 9 miles and 22 miles. But last year, I hiked the stretch from Scissors Crossing to Warner Springs, which is about 32 miles, and then hiked from Campo to Lake Marina, an additional 20 miles or so. That's about 52 miles, doubling my distance once again. How does this compare with thru hikers? It doesn't. I never compare myself with thru hikers. Thru hikers are amazing, no doubt about it. My hat is off to them. But the thing is, they don't suck. You know? And this is not to say that there aren't plenty of things I'm really good at, but it is to acknowledge that here's this one thing that, yeah, I suck at, and I'm going to do it at my pace and in my way. But I fully admit that I am not in that league. So for me, 52 miles is pretty good. Doubling my distance once again, year over year, is pretty good. But I said I made some terrible mistakes, and I did. And I'm going to tell you now because I believe that when you hear my mistakes, it'll help better explain the strategy I'm choosing for this year. So, last year, I started at Scissors Crossing. My plan was to make it to Warner Springs the next day at noon, after Vicky dropped me off at Scissors Crossing around 8 a.m. Are you following on this? I thought I'd hike 32 miles in about a day and a half. I ran into 100+ degree temperatures and a very long, very difficult climb that first day. But I did it. I arrived at Warner Springs just after noon. Was that the right thing to do? Absolutely not. I should have given myself until that night, at the very least. I should have given myself more time, which I would have done, by the way, if I'd been backpacking like a normal person, right? So, that was my lesson from the first stretch. I needed to slow down. Then I went down to Campo and hiked to Lake Marina. But getting to Lake Marina, I was beaten, tired, and sick. I was done. Why? Because I had tried to cover that stretch so fast that I basically wiped myself out. As it turns out, this is a lesson I am having to learn over and over, and I will continue having to learn it until I get it right. That lesson is to slow the fuck down. But this episode is called Why I Might Not Hike the PCT in 2018, right? There's more going on here that I haven't mentioned, because in June of last year, after returning from the PCT, I was out hiking Black Star Canyon here in Orange County. I stepped on a rock and basically screwed up my right foot like nobody's business. I was actually fortunate enough to find a ranger driving through who drove me back to my car. Walking was nearly impossible. Now, you may be thinking I went out and immediately saw a doctor, right? Well, you see, that's not so easy because my wife and I have but one car. I work at home, so it's not usually a problem. But getting to see a doctor when my wife is using the car to go to work, that's a problem. Instead, I iced my foot, and I soaked my foot, and I elevated my foot. I did all those things you're supposed to do. In September, I left on a long road trip and found out that all that icing and soaking and elevating meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not only could I not hike, even driving hurt my foot. But before we get back from that trip, I want to talk about one thing I did learn out there that was absolutely essential, crucial. I think that actually, in a strange way, driving cross-country helped me better understand backpacking cross-country. And I'll give you one specific example of how this helped. Because I stopped several times on my trip. Not just at the end of each day as I was driving from place to place, but just as I was driving during the day, I would stop and see this, that, or the other. And sometimes it was just to see the beauty of the countryside that surrounded me. And on one afternoon, I pulled over in Northern California to look over this absolutely beautiful, sublime portrait of scenery. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful in a painting. It's just amazing. And of course, no picture captured it adequately. It never does. And I decided to not just stop and observe it, but actually to get out and to sit on the hood of my car with my lunch, which was a bottle of lemonade and a blueberry muffin that I had taken from my hotel that morning. And just sit out there and look at how beautiful this countryside was all around me. I must have been out there for an hour and a half. And that might not sound like a whole lot of time, but believe me, for me to stop and just enjoy the view, this is not something that I normally do. And I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. And I remember reclining back on the hood of my car, thinking about what a great gift this was that I was actually giving to myself, just sitting and enjoying the view. which is something I never do when I hike. Never. Because I always feel like I gotta hurry up, gotta keep moving, got things to do, gotta keep moving. But because I don't do that, I end up wearing myself out, beating myself up, and by the time I get to my destination, such as when I reached Lake Marina, I was so tired I couldn't even think of going on. So, anyway, by the time I came home, not only did I know I needed a doctor, I was pretty sure that hiking would be off limits for quite some time. But sadly, the only answers my doctor gave me were, well, not very good. My options were surgery with a long rehab or just the long rehab, but everything I was told sounded like anything my doctor suggested would have taken me out of hiking any of the PCT in 2018. And I wasn't ready to give that up because I had already doubled my distance up to 50 miles. That meant 100 miles was right around the corner, then 200, then 400. I'm actually getting better at this backpacking thing, and I don't want anything to stand in my way of that. I don't want anything to stop me. This is getting good. Instead, my solution was to break in my foot.
Wait.
Maybe I shouldn't say break. My solution was to ease my foot back into hiking, slowly and carefully. I started by walking down to the end of my block. Then I walked a quarter of a mile, then half. When I walked a complete mile, when I actually finished it without my foot killing me by the time I was done, I couldn't believe it. Walking like a normal person again. Because staying off of my foot for all that months had contributed to another change in my life. I got fat. Okay, I got fatter. I got much fatter. I got way more. I ballooned up. I gained more than 20 pounds. Because you see, I couldn't move. I even had to be put on blood pressure medication because I just kept getting fatter and fatter, sitting around, elevating my foot, not getting out and moving. But I changed that starting in October. In November, I walked 2 miles, then 3. In December, I walked 4 miles and added a 5-pound pack to my back. Progress was incredibly slow, and honestly, the pain in my foot made me think I was going to have to end up getting that surgery my doctor had suggested. But I kept at it. And yesterday, I'm happy to say I walked 7.5 miles with a 17-pound pack on my back. I've been hiking and walking and even losing some weight. But I'm not going to lie to you. There's no certainty that my foot will hold out, even now. I just have to keep pushing myself. And yes, taking it slow, slowing down. One element that I've worked into my walks and hikes has been some nice long breaks, taking it slow. Because if there's one thing that's going to stop me from hiking the PCT this year, more than my bum foot, it's my impatience. My irrational need to hurry up, get things done, got to get to the end, got to finish. I know I have to learn to go easy on myself. I have to take breaks, take long breaks. And so, I'm learning. Clearly, I don't expect I'll be hiking all of the PCT this year. My strategy for 2018 is more about setting realistic goals. Goals based on my previous performance. For instance, I'll be starting at Lake Marina this year, picking up where I left off. I'll be splitting the stretch from Lake Marina to Scissors Crossing in 2 parts, 2 days up to Mount Laguna, and 3 days down, which is only one more day than I've backpacked before. But it's also 57 miles, just a bit more than I've done before, so that when I'm done, maybe I'm not completely destroyed this time, and maybe I can then pick up my trail at Warner Springs shortly thereafter. Hike your own hike. That's what they say. Mine might have taken a bit longer than others, and mine may, by the time I'm finished, take a lot longer than others. But it will absolutely be my own. It will be marked by lots of personal growth and discovery, and I'm milking it for everything it's worth. So yes, there will be more podcasts about this. And yes, good people on YouTube, there will be videos. Videos of preparation, videos from the hike, and videos from places you might not expect. And I'll be back in a month to talk more about hiking the PCT in 2018. And I hope to see you out on the trail. Until next time, be good to yourself, be kind to others, and let's make this world a better place.